This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. We're happy to be joined again by Minnesota 6th District Representative Michele Bachmann. She is the first Republican woman ever to represent Minnesota in Congress, and she's no stranger to locking horns with the very liberal House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Welcome back, Representative.
Thank you, Ashley. Always a delight to be on Newsmax.
Your House Republicans stuck together and tried to kill the Barney Frank financial reform bill a few days ago, but the Democrats have such a majority that the legislation passed, even though 27 Democrats voted against it, along with the unanimous Republican vote. In your view, what's the worst thing about this bill?
It's an absolutely terrible bill, Ashley, because number one, it makes the bailouts, of which the majority of Americans now oppose, it makes them permanent. It gives the power to President Obama to issue bailouts anytime he chooses, and he bypasses Congress. He no longer needs our permission to give a bailout to a private business. Number two, it will likely cost in excess of over 1 million job losses in the United States. And third, it's yet one more government takeover of private industry. In this case, the financial services industry. Some experts have estimated this would give government control or ownership of 10 to 15% of the economy. That's on top of the 30% of the economy the government today has already taken ownership or control of. If you want to go back in time and take a retrospective of 2009, Ashley, you'd have to say that the lead story this year is the government takeover of private industry.
Why would we want Barney Frank writing anything like this?
Barney Frank and financial service meltdown has been synonymous. And if you look at the architects of ruin of our financial meltdown, you'd have to look at the banking chairman, Chris Dodd of Connecticut, and Barney Frank, our chairman from the state of Massachusetts. Barney Frank, forever and ever, has been an apologist for Fannie and Freddie, the secondary mortgage insurance companies, which at one time were private, but today, for all practical purposes, are owned by the federal government. That's the epicenter. That's the problem, because the federal government has said, take all the risks you want and we'll bail you out. Make all the bad loans you want. We'll bail you out. That's Freddie and Fannie. And now the federal government has taken the worst of the financial meltdown and they've institutionalized it, and that's thanks to Chairman Barney Frank.
All right, Representative, the House voted to kill another piece of legislation. This one would have given judges new power to rewrite home mortgages. Your thoughts on that, please?
Oh, I'm so grateful that that went down. This again would be unconstitutional. It would violate the sanctity of contract law. What lender in the future would want to make a loan knowing that the judge would have the authority to walk in between the lender and the borrower, and a judge would be able to say to a borrower, gee, that $100,000 mortgage you have, you really can't afford paying that back. I'm going to drop your principal down to $60,000. And that 8% interest rate that you're paying, too much for you. I'm going to take it down to 0%. That's the power a judge would have had in restructuring a mortgage. That's insanity when you're trying to have stability in the financial marketplace. It was a good thing that bill went down.
All right, if the Senate approves the Democrats' 2,000-page government takeover of health care, it'll have to go back to the House for approval again, although the health care reform was written, as some say, by liberals for liberals with absolutely no Republican input. The GOP was solidly behind the Stupak amendment prohibiting taxpayer money going to insurance companies that cover abortions. Your best guess, does that amendment stay in the final version of the legislation?
I think in order for the bill to actually have a hope of passing, it would have to stay in. There are too many people who've made commitments to pro-life constituency to pull that measure out. The Democrats are in a very difficult spot right now. They have so many competing constituencies, but the number one will maker right now, you might say, is the fact that the president wants a bill. He needs a bill. He's made all sorts of promises that he'll have one before Christmas, and I think the pressure will be unbearable on the Democrats in the Senate, perhaps on a few Republicans as well, but overwhelmingly, 61% of the American people disapprove of the government takeover of health care. We're down to 34% approval. That number continues to drop together with the public's approval ratings of this president. And clearly it's because the American people on their own are reading the bill. It's no thanks to the mainstream media who haven't been telling the American people the truth about this bill, but it's still a very bad bill. It has an unconstitutional imposition of a mandate that every American must buy a service or a product against their will. There are very heavy fines for business, very heavy fines for individuals. This will, in all likelihood, be the largest middle-class tax increase in American history, and it will be the next step to socialize medicine.
And according to a report the other day, CBO is telling us that a middle-class family that's above the 400% of poverty threshold will have to purchase health insurance but is not entitled to government subsidies. Therefore, that will cost them, the policy, about $15,200 a year. That's
correct. As a matter of fact, some estimates have said in Minnesota, if an individual went out today and had to purchase a private health insurance plan with about a $1,000 deductible, that would cost the family about $12,000 a year. However, Speaker Pelosi has very heavy, expensive mandates in her health care bill. So take that $12,000 policy in Minnesota, multiply that by a factor of 1.73, Speaker Pelosi's mandates, that could cost an individual up to $20,000. And here's the other kicker, Ashley. Individuals in the House bill making more than $59,000 a year, that's both husband and wife's income together, joint income. If a household has more than $59,000, this government subsidy goes away. So therefore, they don't have a tax-free benefit. They have to purchase that very expensive health care in the private market with after-tax income. This is a very expensive burden that we're putting on the American people. In effect, this mandate is a tax, a new health tax on the American people. It puts a lot of uncertainty into a lot of Americans' lives, and people will have to make a decision. Do they want to buy health care, which they'll be forced to do, or do they make their car payment? Or do they put their child through college? Or do they make their mortgage payment? There will be so much misery that comes if this bill goes through, and that's why it's not too late. I believe it's not inevitable that this bill goes through. I still think there's time for the American people to call their U.S. Senator and tell them to vote no on this government takeover of health care.
If the worst happens and Obama signs into law the government takeover of health care, can that be reversed the next time Republicans win control of Congress? Or will it be too late, as is the case with many entitlement programs?
It would be very difficult. I won't shade this and I won't kid you. It would be very difficult because the Republicans would have to hold a hand similar to what the Democrats hold right now. That is, the Republicans would have to hold the White House, have 60 seats in the Senate, and have a majority in the House. That is a very difficult combination to come by. Also, if a lawsuit is filed about the unconstitutional nature of this bill, which one should be, experts estimate it could take as long as 4 to 5 years for that lawsuit to make its way to the Supreme Court.
Meanwhile, the taxes kick in immediately.
Immediately, that's right. And the taxes are very, very painful. The Americans will pay taxes, heavy taxes, for probably 4 years before any health care benefits were down to the American people. This is a really bad bill, done very quickly, done behind closed doors, with virtually zero Republican input. The president made a big deal about saying he was going to have all of the health care debate out in the open with C-SPAN cameras running. That hasn't happened for 10 seconds. And the American people are really steamed about it. They're angry, and I don't think neither the Speaker of the House nor Harry Reid nor the president have fully gauged the anger of the American people over this lack of responsiveness to what the American people want.
And in the middle of all this, in the face of double-digit unemployment, Illinois Representative Luis Gutierrez introduces a bill aimed at legalizing the millions of illegal alien workers in this country. Now, given the Democrats' huge majority, do you think that will pass the House?
You know, this shows the level of a tin ear, Ashley, that this current Congress and President have to the American people. It was what, in 2007, when we had the amnesty bill that came forward, and the phone lines were melted in Washington, D.C. I had just come as a brand new member of Congress. The American people spoke out loudly and clearly, but again, this administration sees that the hand that they've been dealt is one-party rule. They control every lever of power, and they're using it. Remember, our Declaration of Independence says that we rule by the consent of the governed. In other words, we have to make our decisions in accordance with the will of the American people. The current Democrat administration has decided they're going to pass laws in conformity with their will.
Minnesota U.S. Representative Michele Bachmann, as always, it's been a pleasure and good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV. Sarah Palin's new book, Going Rogue in American Life, will be released on November 17th. You can be among the first to get your copy. Check out our incredible free offer for Sarah's new book. Just go to Newsmax.com and click on the top banner for this great offer. Act today.